Hi, I'm Alex Winter, director of the new documentary Downloaded, and you are watching the Pretentious Film Majors.
Ben Silverio here at the Trocadero Theater for another Awesome Fest screening, and right now we're here with Alex Winter.
Hello.
Alex, thank you for joining us right now.
Of course.
Cool.
In
So,
the back of the theater.
oh yeah, this is pretty nifty. I like this.
Cool.
All right, so let's get right into it. So,
Okay.
how did you first get involved with Downloaded? Was VH1 there from the beginning, or did they come in later?
Well, they came in later. You know, it started with Sean Fanning and Napster, which kind of blew my head off in '99, and so I tracked him down in 2002. I'd gotten caught up with Napster as a service and then Napster as a story. It was an incredible story. I followed it really closely and followed the two Seans as they were stuck under the blistering spotlight, and then they kind of incinerated under that spotlight. So I hunted them down. I thought it was a very worthwhile story to get told, but it was a little early to tell the Napster story. People who didn't heavily use computers didn't really understand the broad scope of what it meant on a global level yet. So I put it away and came back to it more recently as a doc. And I went to VH1 and pitched it to them as a doc.
Cool. Yeah, I noticed that a lot of the older archival footage, was like from back then. So you've been following this since it started, really?
Well, I went back and dug up pre-existing archival. So, I didn't start assembling footage until I put the doc together, but I knew there was a lot of archival material. And I knew there was, because I was around during the Napster story when it broke, so I knew who broke it. I knew that MTV News was at the front of it. I knew that The Daily Show was at the front of it. I knew there were certain people who seemed to understand what was actually happening, though there was a lot of comic mileage in the many people who didn't understand what was happening.
Cool. So you have a lot of the key players in Napster and a lot of real big musicians like Noel Gallagher, Mike D, and Henry Rollins. But was there anyone that you wish you could have gotten but didn't? And did you at all approach Lars Ulrich or Dr. Dre for this?
I approached Lars, and Lars said yes at first and then kind of backed out, and I understood. But, I wasn't really... I really didn't want to make a tit-for-tat movie. I really wasn't interested at all in that. Like, the thing I was really trying to avoid was a bunch of people screaming and yelling, or conversely, sort of rewriting history. So, I wanted to go to the horse's mouth. The story's about the Napster company. That's what the movie's specifically about. So I wanted to cover the guys who built the service and who ran and worked the service. And then I was really interested in talking to label heads that I thought, and artists that I thought would actually have something to say about the digital revolution. Not just, I didn't want to make an anecdotal movie like, oh yeah, I wish I hadn't said all that shit about Napster. That's really boring. And we've seen that a million times. I really wanted people who had some grip on I think, highly complex issues that are facing us today in terms of the internet, global transparency, the sort of democratization of culture, the rights of citizens, the rights of consumers, the rights of artists. A lot of artists actually don't have much to say on that at all because, out of fairness, they're not interested in it.
So was there at any point in the process where you were going to start looking into the movie side of downloading? Because there's a whole lot of pirating of movies going on, and I know some people would get episodes of TV shows from long ago on Napster or Kazaa or all that stuff. So was that in your mind when putting together this doc?
The doc is primarily about Napster, which was primarily about these guys who wanted to create a global community. They were very young. They were both, at the same time, highly disruptive by nature, like a lot of tech entrepreneurs are. And they knew that they felt that they had a better system than the existing system, which is, a pretty visionary attitude to take, especially when you're capable of coding and delivering that system, and not just a pipe dream. But they were highly naive, as far as business went. So they unleashed this demon thinking that they were going to get deals with labels, and the labels were so freaked out, they said, no way, and the whole thing crumbled. That's really the story I wanted to tell. I didn't want to get into, the sort of the torrenting stuff. I get into that a little bit in the third act, but Napster wasn't a torrent site. So it wasn't really so much about the file sharing companies that erupted after Napster. I go into them so much about what the vision of the Napster guys was and what happened to that vision that they tried to implement, partly due to their own fault and miscalculations and partly due to the way the world did not receive what they wanted to give the world.
So were you yourself a Napster user when it first came out?
I was a Napster user from the moment it was online to the very last nanosecond that it went offline. I mean, it was actually one of the big watershed moments in my life in terms of a cultural experience. It's really hard to describe what Napster did if you're too young to have actually used it regularly, like a grown-up or an old enough teen to really respond to it. But for me, it was never about stealing music. I mean, I was old enough that I already bought all my music 90 times over in every conceivable format by the time that Napster came along. So I didn't need the Neil Young catalog anymore. I had it in LP, CD, cassette tape. I had 8-track versions of it. I'd given the record industry so much money for the Neil Young catalog by then that I kind of wanted some back. But it was an enormous resource for basically any music, whether it was cataloged music, whether it was music with a record company, whether it was music that was completely unknown, that had no recording. It was everything. It was every kind of bootleg you could possibly imagine, and it was community, and it was real-time chat in an era when the internet moved very slowly. So there really is no service. You have to imagine YouTube, Facebook, iChat, and Spotify, all combined into one extremely fast, robust service. That's what Napster was 13 years ago.
So moving to other aspects of your career, you haven't been in front of the camera since like 2007, I believe. Right? I think. That Ben 10 movie.
I directed that.
No, I thought you were like a minor character, like random.
Scouring IMDb too
Man,
randomly.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Too much time on my
IMDb is
hands.
a garbage dump of misinformation. No, I stopped acting professionally in 1993, and I started directing professionally in 86. I started directing music videos and TV commercials in 86. And as soon as that side of my career was bringing me enough income to not act anymore, I stopped acting, because this has always been my first love. So I directed both the live action Ben 10 movies. I think I gave a voice to one of the characters for fun, and so I've got an IMDb credit for it.
Right, that could have been it.
That's what it is.
Yeah, my question was going to be if you had any plans to get back, into acting, maybe on the stage where you had a little bit of experience.
I mean, I love acting. I really do. I've done it since I was 10 years old. I don't dislike it. I just prefer writing and shooting, and I've been really busy and very lucky to be able to have a great career doing that. So that's what I do. But I act from time to time. I just acted in a movie with Elijah Wood and John Cusack. I got to play a bad guy in a thriller that's coming out this fall called Grand Piano. But I really do it only when I have a minute to jump in. And if suddenly I found myself with more time to do it, I might.
Cool. All right. So going back to Downloaded right now, if there was any interest in giving it like the social network treatment, do you think that you'd be interested in getting involved behind the camera for that?
No, I don't. I definitely am done. I wrote it as a narrative originally. I wrote it at a major studio as a narrative, as a dramatic narrative, and it went into turnaround there many years ago, like in 04, 05. And when I had the idea of converting it into a doc, it was like a thunderbolt. I knew at that moment that was the best way to tell this story, and in my view, the only way to tell this story, because it's unlike The Social Network, which is a great movie, but is all about the sort of interpersonal relationships. That's what it's about. The interpersonal relationships with Napster are by far the least interesting aspect of Napster, and the most interesting aspect of Napster are the global issues stuff. It was revolutionary, it was evolutionary, it was highly contentious, it was disruptive. That makes for a great documentary, because you have all of these revolutionary characters on the label side, on the tech side, who can talk about what happened. You give a bunch of actors that stuff, and it immediately is going to diminish it, because it's too removed from the actual events. And then you have to get personal, and the personal in the story is really boring.
Well, you made it all very dynamic on screen, so.
Thank you. Well, they did, but yeah, thank you. It is dynamic on its own.
So finally, after Awesome Fest, where can fans go out and see Downloaded?
Well, we've got a theatrical. I'm doing a small theatrical release because it plays nice on the big screen. It's nice to see it on the big screen. But it's given the subject matter, it's mostly focused on the digital. It's called Downloaded, so you got to be able to download it. It'd be kind of lame if you couldn't. So it's going to come out on like iTunes and cable VOD on July 1st. So you'll be able, any video on demand service, any cable, Amazon, whatever. And then AOL is doing this really cool, very big streaming release for the movie in the fall. So
cool. Well, thanks a whole lot for taking some time out.
Thanks a lot. And now you can go back and clean up your IMDb page.
It's a mess, trust me.
Hi, I'm Alex Winter, star of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and the director of the new documentary Downloaded, and you are watching Pretentious Film Shit.